Okay, hello everyone and welcome. My name is Sofia Perejuntin and I'm the head of marketing at Extenda Solutions. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar using AI in the software as a medical device product lifecycle. I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker, Richard R.J. Ketsiora, co-founder and COO of Extenda Solutions. RJ is a digital health and AI expert with more than 30 years of experience in technology and healthcare. Over the course of his career, he has led award-winning projects, including an HIMSS Davis Award, and he personally received the Health 2.0 Outstanding Leadership Award. He brings deep expertise in leadership, process improvement, software development, and governance. He earned his MBA from Westchester University and his BS in computer science from Duquesne University, where he received the Excellence in Computer Science Award. In addition to his work at Estenda, RJ is a frequent podcast guest, conference speaker, and co-author of articles in both technology and peer-reviewed clinical journals. RJ is also an aspiring author with his upcoming book, Productive Harmony, a framework for optimizing productivity through energy management rather than time management, expected to be published in early 2026. Outside of work, he's a competitive age group 3 athlete and has set himself the life goal of reaching plus 100 years with a high quality of life. Above all, RJ is passionate about creating innovative digital health solutions that improve patient outcomes, increase efficiency, reduce costs, and ultimately make a positive difference in people's lives. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce RJ. RJ, you're muted.
I am muted, and you all missed the best joke, which I won't repeat, and it'll just leave you in suspense. But thank you, Sophia. I greatly appreciate that. Started here. So today we are going to talk about using AI in the software development lifecycle, looking at each of the individual roles as part of that process, how to be more efficient and help improve our quality, as well as look at some of the risks and regulatory considerations as we're now introducing AI into the software development process. First, a couple quick definitions. There is a difference between digital health software in general and software as a medical device, SaMD. SaMD is really standalone software intended to be used for one or more medical purposes without being part of a hardware medical device, and that's key. If there is a medical device involved, it's probably software in the medical device. The key differentiator between general digital health and SaMD is really that intended use, where SaMD is intended to diagnose, treat, monitor, prevent a disease, as opposed to being a lifestyle type of application. And the key there is that the FDA is going to come into the picture, or other global regulatory bodies, and they're going to look much more closely to ensure that the application that you're developing, the SaMD, has a strong, rigorous focus on patient safety, clinical effectiveness, and that regulatory compliance. As you'll see in many of these presentations, I'm not intending these to be legal or regulatory advice. Definitely should have conversations specifically around your situation to make sure that you're following the best practices. Why software as a medical device? I think there's a bunch of reasons why we really have to consider software as a medical device. There are a lack of qualified healthcare professionals out there. There's just too many sick people in need of medical care and assistance, and not enough professionals. They're going to be retiring more and more. And so we have this confluence of healthcare professionals getting older and retiring, but that same population needing assistance. Software as medical device, algorithms, applications can help make a difference. I think patient usage of AI and increased personal accountability of our own healthcare is going to increase the need for medically superior applications. The advent and proliferation of wearables is huge, as well as care moving out of the four walls of the hospital with telemedicine and aging at home we need to take more and more responsibility for our own care. And then, of course, we as humans, we have our own limitations and fallibility. So as we can use these applications and features and capabilities out there to improve our health and wellness. As Sophia said, I have this life goal of living to 100 plus with a good quality of life. I think software and AI is going to be the things that help me do that. From a corporate perspective, why would you want to go down the road of SaMD, which then you're inviting the FDA into your house? It's really about that protection of the patient health and well-being, that focus on safety, effectiveness, and regulatory compliance. Today, we're really going to focus on the technical side as opposed to like the clinical side of that. But it's about generating algorithms for personalized care, better increased market access, larger reimbursements. There's a corollary term, digital therapeutics, that is out there. And it's the same idea where a doctor is going to prescribe the application to you and be reimbursed by insurance. So instead of me as a patient, as an individual, paying for the use of that application, it's going to be reimbursed for insurance. I think it engenders user trust if you can say that your application has been FDA approved or reviewed from the healthcare professional as well as the patients, knowing that they can rely on that product. It's definitely a market differentiator and a competitive edge in terms of a barrier to entry of people trying to achieve that. There is a long conversation around whether or not what you are going to develop as an application where the algorithm your development is a software as a medical device or not. And a lot of it is around that intended use. But you do want to talk to the experts. You do want to talk to the FDA about it because you don't want to get in trouble from the FDA. There's a very recent case last month or so where Whoop, which is marketing themselves as a wellness device, the FDA issued a warning letter to them that their new blood pressure feature did not receive the proper FDA approvals. Whoop is arguing and saying that they don't think they belong in that same category, but it's definitely causing them some consternation and challenges in getting their product out there. At the same time, we see a number of competing products, Omron, Garmin, the Apple Watch, Samsung. They have cleared their devices as medical devices for blood pressure monitoring. So these vendors have a leg up over Whoop right now. Just today, also, the FDA issued a general warning letter about use of baby monitors that are capable of monitoring vital signs. They have not been approved for monitoring of babies for things like sudden infant death syndrome, but they are being marketed for that. And the FDA said you should not rely on those because they haven't gone through the proper testing and approval protocols. Today, we're really looking at the software development lifecycle. Throughout your development effort, there's planning and risk management activities that are ongoing. And on the left-hand side, it's about requirements gathering and understanding what you're going to build, ultimately where you're building it in from a code perspective. And then extensive testing, verification, and validation to make sure that it is doing what you intended and it is taking patient safety into consideration. Once you do have that out in the market, there is ongoing maintenance and post-market surveillance to make sure that it continues operating as expected. AI is accelerating the software development lifecycle, where once, the old way, which I'll reference it a number of times throughout this presentation, is the old way, the original way. Developing a software application took some time. The new way with AI is definitely accelerating our capabilities in terms of building applications and getting them out the door with a high degree of quality. Our goals of using AI in the software development lifecycle are really about being more efficient, learning faster, reducing risk. As you go into any software development project, there's going to be a lot of unknowns, things that you're not aware of. Change is going to happen. So how can we use AI to look at those factors and ensure high quality and ultimately get stuff done? In our particular case today with SaMD, how do we maintain that structured and rigorous focus, patient safety, effectiveness, and regulatory compliance? So as we drill down into the process, you're going to get started with a planning, how you're going to approach this, and risk management. Risk management is one of the bigger aspects of software development when you are undertaking a SaMD project and the FDA is going to look at what you're doing. You want to be able to effectively plan and manage your risk. So from the early stages in terms of market analysis and concept validation, as you go into a project, you probably have a pretty good idea of what you want to accomplish. Or maybe you're just exploring it and want some validation that, okay, this product makes sense. It makes sense to take this challenge on. There's a lot of prompts that you can do to help validate that. Act like a McKinsey consultant or your favorite consulting shop, whether it be IBM or Bain, and ask it to do market overviews, segmentation, SWOT analysis, positionings. What are the top challenges or user pain points? Very interesting opportunities to learn a lot about what is going on. But what I really love is these last three here. The key to using AI in these early stages are not to get yes, no answers. It's really to start a conversation. You want AI to be your partner in all of this and help improve your overall capabilities. So list 3 counterintuitive thoughts. Have the AI play devil's advocate and be like, why would this product be a total failure? Obviously, you don't want it to be, but you can better look at the risk factors on why that might happen. What could possibly go wrong? When you think of that clinical effectiveness and patient safety, what things could go wrong with it? Some key use cases and where AI can come into play. The first in user group interviews in preparation or practice. Recently, I've been part of a project around smell testing and had to interview some experts on the idea of smell testing, an area that I was not familiar with. I've been doing user interviews for decades now. It's definitely something I'm comfortable doing, have experience doing. But it was very easy to go into ChatGPT, present the information about the individual and smell testing, and ask it to generate a series of questions. And what's fascinating is very quickly, it generated 10 questions, and you can ask it to generate 10 more and 10 more. And then based on your knowledge and experience, you can craft the scope of those interviews based on those questions. Likewise, you can develop user personas. Who are the stakeholders that are going to use your application? What are their pain points? What are they looking for in an application? One of the fascinating use cases for AI these days, the ChatGPTs, the Geminis, on your phone, you can download the application and use the video features to actually observe scenes and ask it information about what it's seeing. Powerful opportunity to gather information. Likewise, once you finish those user interviews, summarization, key themes, and sentiment analysis, AI is very good at sentiment analysis. So as you've gathered up a dozen, 20, 30 user interviews with your various different constituents, your stakeholders, you can have AI do a sentiment analysis to figure out, what makes sense, to pull out key factors that came around. And I haven't really seen this yet, but I'm looking forward to this last item here in terms of performance improvement. As you are yourself conducting those interviews, record the interview, and then have AI assess your own performance in that user interview to be able to improve your own capabilities and safety of your home. So trying to have some fun with this, I developed a couple different application concepts. And so this first year, I put in a prompt into the various systems. I'm developing a digital health app. Need to create a user persona to test out features. Act like the digital health and design expert and ask me questions to create a persona. There's a couple things to point out here. One, yes, in this example, I wouldn't think this is a SaMD application. I do have another example where we'll go into that specifically. But act like a digital health and design expert. That is a key call out here when you are using AI and prompting it. always tell it to act like an expert in your particular field. You're going to get much better responses. Then the last thing there, ask me questions to create the persona. I think the power of AI today is it's the first technology that you can actually use to understand how to better use it. So instead of just creating a persona, you can ask it to help you create a persona. And I created these two images. They are AI generated images of what one of the people that I was targeting for within my application might look like. So in this case, when I asked it to generate questions around my user persona, you can see here, and I shortcut this because there was a lot of questions that I was asking to create that persona. But I was looking at demographics and background, tech app usage, goals and motivation, psychographic factors for that user to be able to create the profile. And then we create this persona, and AI named this person Emily Carter. And you see some basic demographics: 36, female, white, lived in the greater Northeast. I'm not sure if it picked greater Northeast because whether or not I put her in an Eagle shirt, I don't know. But then looking at things like tech behavior and expectations, health and lifestyle, those psychographic factors, in terms of personality, values, attitudes towards health, goals, and motivations. So now I have a very well thought out user persona of someone that might use my application. And you could definitely change and tweak this and easily generate multiple personas based on the different users of your application. So then I took it a step further and asked ChatGPT to generate some ideas for how we could help people with the fear of peanut butter getting stuck to the roof of their mouth. And it came up with some rather interesting suggestions. I like the individual peanut butter swap finder to suggest less sticky alternatives, or even just a daily peanut butter challenge. Interestingly, it didn't say just avoid peanut butter. Looking at a more SaMD focused type of application, did the same thing. Act as an FDA regulatory expert. So now I'm aware that this application is going to be SaMD and have a higher threshold because I'm intending it to diagnose and monitor a particular disease. I want to develop an app that detects heart rate through video analysis of a person's face, an individual's face. So provide alerts to warn the user of heart attacks and notify EMS. And it's these later two facts here which really push us over in terms of that SaMD. I'm intending to diagnose a particular thing and try and monitor and prevent it. Where if we were just providing an app that was looking at heart rate, and these do exist on the market, where a camera can, take a video analysis of your features of your face and detect your heart rate. But we're taking it a step further. So the first feedback it gave me, I was very happy to see, but it realized, acting as an FDA regulator, that this is a SaMD product. And then it broke down into multiple areas and providing me more advice and things that I needed to look at, particularly in terms of device classification. And this was where you really do need to work with the experts in the FDA. Yes, the AI does provide useful information, but you don't want to rely on it 100%. Here you can see the device classification based on its intended use and risk level might be level 2 or level 3. It also gave numerous suggestions around regulatory pathways, key FDA guidance documents, cybersecurity and privacy, clinical evaluation, and quality system requirements. So as we advance in the software development lifecycle, now we have a pretty good idea of what we want to do from an overall project perspective. And we want to look at the project and quality plans around that. And this is where our use of the AI technology starts getting deeper, more involved. Beyond just asking it prompts and prompting it for information, you want to start educating the AI about your quality management system. So if you do have a system in place, then whether or not it's ISO 1345 certified or Part 820 certified for government, the FDA purposes, make the AI aware, train it on your documents so it knows what you are expecting. This provides extensive feedback that is very tailored to what you are doing and how you are used to creating your documents. In a lot of these systems, in the ChatGPTs and the Geminis, you can create dedicated workspaces or projects to gather those documents together such that it maintains that context over time. And every time you use the AI, you don't have to tell it about these documents again and again. It's just maintains that memory of those. If you don't have a quality management system or you're not familiar with these regulations, again, I recommend talking to experts, but just mention the standards throughout your process and your discussions. Mention that you want to become compliant with ISO 13485 and 62304 and the various other standards. In healthcare, you most likely have to be HIPAA compliant. So as you mention those, it's going to provide you more tailored advice throughout your conversations. Very particularly in terms of project plans, you can have it generate work breakdown structure and estimate task complexity and duration. This is a fascinating exercise to go through as you create your project plan or various different tasks that need to be completed. The AIs can help you create those plans and better understand, some of that complexity, and then adjust as you go. But the call out here is really as you're going through this process, a powerful opportunity is to ask ChatGPT as it's familiar with your project, as it's familiar with your project plan. You can ask it, what did you forget? What did we overlook? Or what other factors need to be considered? Again, prompting it to be that FDA expert to review your documents is a powerful opportunity. If we look at risk management, there's various aspects we want to look at risk management, business, regulatory, clinical. So again, act as a software risk management expert with 20 years of experience with the FDA. Based on my app, again, giving it conversation as part of this context, it's going to understand what you're talking about. What standards and guidelines do I need to take into account? If you are more familiar with those standards and guidelines, even better, follow these templates and you can provide it the templates that you are using as part of your quality management system and even examples such that it can learn and use that in its output. So based on my app, what risks do I need to consider? And it's going to follow these templates and examples to provide you that information. We've used this a couple times now in terms of generating a cybersecurity risk. This is, the last few years, the FDA and other government bodies and even organizations are turning their attention to risk, cybersecurity risk. It's a growing problem and challenge. It's very good at generating these risk tables, and it's familiar because of its training with how to put these together. So tell it how you are expecting to do your cybersecurity risk assessments, and it can generate that. As with most things with AI, it's an 80-20%, so it's going to get you 80% of the way there. You do need to double check and cross check what it's actually producing. Just don't take it at face value, but it can get you a good ways of the way there. From a requirements perspective, again, looking at those stakeholders and user personas, but we can use it to help generate our functional, technical, regulatory requirements and use it in prototyping. Again, as we develop those requirements as we're going along, we can ask it these key questions. What did you forget, overlook, or otherwise need to consider? And what's interesting, again, is you're providing that context. The more you can give it examples or templates to use, the better off you're going to do. If you just tell it you're ISO 13485 certified, it's going to start using the appropriate language that is expected. Start using the word shall. So again, looking at our example here, I asked it, ChatGPT to identify ways to help in terms of people getting over the fear. So text analyzer, tips and techniques, tips like pairing with certain foods to help offset that sickiness. Pairing engine or an emergency unstick mode, just sort of a fun feature. So again, gets the creative thought process going of how you might be able to attack this problem and add capabilities and answers. But because we are focused on a healthcare, I asked it to use a behavioral approach. And this is, you're thinking about your application and you're working with your expert users to determine, what approach do they want to use, and it will generate information around just that. Or looking at the user journey or as user case stories. Here's an example of the onboarding, the education, the child reflection, and the reward process, guiding you through that. So it can generate a lot of very useful documents very early on. And as you provide a context, it will tailor it to your specific situation. Where the capabilities of AI start jumping really quickly is its ability to create wireframes. So based on those conversations I was having with it, in a very short time, I asked it to create some wireframes, and you can see that it created a couple quick wireframes here as points of discussion as you're working with your users. One of the challenges is people tend to not always know what they want or not always know how to frame what they're asking for. One of my favorite anecdotal stories is the idea of Henry Ford, the inventor of the Model T, car and the assembly line way back in the early 1900s. If he went out and asked the current people of the time, who are all used to horse and carriages, and he asked them what did they want, they're all going to say, "I want a faster horse." They weren't thinking about cars. So they don't always know what they want. They may not always be right, but they do have a point. And so being able to provide those graphics, the images, the various different wireframes, you can get to useful conversations very quickly. Pictures worth 1,000 words. So a big differentiator in terms of the software development lifecycle and understanding what you need to develop and creating something that's truly useful. There is this idea of vibe coding out there. I don't think vibe coding is quite ready yet for production use, but it excels at vibe prototyping, where in mere minutes you can generate prototypes of applications for marketing purposes, early validation that an idea, has legs and is actually worth going after. Using these tools is huge, and there are dozens of tools out there. These are just a few of them on the market. In the case of the two examples that I'll show in a second, I used the Lovable. Again, I just went into Lovable and asked it to create that digital health app with the fear of peanut butter getting stuck to the roof of their mouth. And very quickly, it came back with extensive information around what it was going to do. It was going to create a digital health app to help people overcome, and I'm not even going to attempt to pronunciate that, but that it would be a supportive, calming therapeutic app with gradual exposure techniques, various features, and a design system. In this example for today, I didn't give it a lot of context or information, but with just that limited idea of doing a digital health application, it can come up with extensive ideas to start exploring. It chose to go with soft tones and browns and came back with an early example of what the application might start looking like. I wasn't too into the brown tones. I prefer the blues and the greens, so I asked it to change it, and very quickly it can then just change it in terms of the colors. As you are working with a UI designer, UX designers kind of thing, having them change color is probably a pretty easy thing to change, but as you start going about making bigger changes that affect more parts of your proposed application, the AI can do this very quickly. Here's an example where I want to track the journey and then some basic marketing information. If we go back to my SaMD example, same thing, asked it to generate an application around monitoring heart rate through facial video analysis with emergency alert systems. So here you can see it created 3 different options here: monitor, dashboard, and emergency, where the camera would actually be able to interact and measure your heart rate. From the dashboard, various metrics that were collected over time in terms of your current heart rate, your averages, and various activity that has been happening. And the last, which is the key to this proposed system, is the idea of an emergency alert in case something does go happen. who do you want to actually call in case of an emergency. A very powerful opportunity to generate feedback for the system. From a development perspective, and this is really where the AI is improving things by leaps and bounds. I don't think you can use any of the vibe coding solutions today, where the code and everything is really contained within their environments. There have been instances of various platforms just deleting your entire code base and then apologizing after the fact and not being able to recover it. Something clearly you don't want to happen. But there are numerous solutions where it's AI-assisted coding, Claude Code, ChatGPT. All of these can help you code and develop, so it's more code assistance. As you're getting into prompt engineering, and we'll have a few examples, we need to go beyond the just simple prompt engineering to context engineering, or either orchestration, which is a quickly coming idea around the use of multiple AI agents to solve your problems and develop your solution. So instead of being that individual where you're sitting at a keyboard and typing out code, now you're telling the AI what to create. You do want to inform the AI of your cybersecurity standards, other regulatory standards. Inform it that this is a SaMD, because that is going to impact how it develops the solution. One of the challenges in these early stages of AI-generated code is it's not the best from a cybersecurity perspective, so you really have to work on that. And just as another note, there is a website out there called DeepWiki. It provides API documentation for AIs to consume it. So if you are using a particular SaaS-based product available on the internet that has an API, you can use DeepWiki to generate API documentation that your coding AI can consume and use to better understand how to use it, instead of you having to necessarily figure it all out and make use of it. I highly advocate for the use of what's coming around. It's called an agents.md file. And we're all familiar with README files in various projects that are telling us as humans information we need to know about a project to get started. Having project description information and the like. The Agents MD file is a quickly growing standard where it's designed and focused on telling AI systems, AI agents, what they need to know about coding within the application. And in terms of the SaMD products and regulatory requirements, in terms of traceability and understanding how the system is being built, this is a key document that should be part of your process today as you're using AI to develop a solution. Even if you're not using AI to develop the whole solution, but using it piecemeal in different parts, it's definitely where you should start today. So it's providing transparency. Single source of truth for development, quality, and the regulatory teams. It's where they can go and look for information, providing that key traceability and support for regulatory submissions that you are following good practices. In that Agent MD file, should find things like the project overview, build and test commands, code style guidelines to make sure that, again, the AI is generating code as you are expecting it, not going off and using its own code styling. Testing instructions, those very important security considerations and regulatory considerations. But think of it as, what would you tell a new developer coming onto the process? If you go out to GitHub right now and search, in the search bar, you can say path::agents.md. There are about 20,000 examples of these out there now. So it is a quickly growing standard to provide information to your AI development agents. From a prompt perspective, we've all starting to migrate away from the simple idea of create a login system to where something is much more effective. You want to give it that targeted information and context to build a secure, scalable user authentication system, not just a login system, and to use React and Node backend deployed to Azure. And what are some of those key considerations? And again, using that agents MD file, which is going to encapsulate a lot of this information. Likewise, as you might be using it for improving your code, telling it to fix an issue doesn't give it a lot of information, but it is going to try and do something. One of the things we've seen with AI is it likes to please the user. So if you just tell it to fix the issue, it's going to go and try and find an issue and fix something, whether or not it needs to be fixed. So more effectively, you want to correct a specific issue in a specific file and refer to a JIRA issue for those details. If you have that connection, or if not, you can just cut and paste or drop in a PDF or Word document with that information to allow it to better focus on what it needs to do and change and improve. Powerful opportunity in terms of producing good quality code. Again, looking at patient safety and clinical effectiveness and looking out for that patient to make sure the software works, using AI for code review. There's a new OpenAI GPT-5 codex on market in the last few days. They've taken their AI and specifically focused on training it specifically for conducting code reviews and finding flaws. Where earlier attempts at this really just looked at the code in isolation, now it's taking in a lot more considerations, actually looking at a pull request and to see what the differences were around that, and looking at the entire code base and other dependencies, and also actually attempting to execute code and test to validate that this fix actually works, that your code is working. SNCC is a vendor out there that's doing a lot in terms of code security, cybersecurity awareness. There are dozens of vendors out there. I have no affiliation to either of these. But SNCC Code, I do like. They have an AI static application security testing as part of their package, where if you let it, can actually make the code changes for you as it identifies issues, can correct them. The powerful technology. So if we look at the development revolution, evolution, however you want to look at it, in that old school world, we're going to analyze requirements, we code, we test, we refactor to improve it and deploy. New school, it's all about the context and using that agents MD file and precision prompts, orchestrating, working with those agents where we're going to iteratively refine, take the best of what's possible, and now even automated threat detection and code resolution. In the not too distant future here, real world issue resolution is going to be possible as customers, users, your quality group, reports issues through JIRA. In the not too distant future, it's going to be able to identify and make the corrections to that. And one of the fascinating things about AI and its ability to code, consider 3 years ago, this technology, the large language models that are enabling ChatGPT and the Geminis weren't even really in the public eye. Coding has gotten significantly better over the years, and it's becoming a real possibility in how we use it in our software development and making us more efficient and better. And in fact, just today I saw in the news the International Collegiate Programming Contest World Finals were held, and OpenAI's GPT-5 solved all 12 challenges. Google's Gemini solved 10 of those 12. The best human team solved 11 of them this year. And only once in the history of this contest has a human team, it's typically a team of 3 people from a university, have ever solved all 12 problems. And what's interesting about this is that GPT-5 was used. It wasn't something that was trained specifically for software development or for addressing these types of challenges. It used the general GPT-5 that we all have access to. I say my claim to fame is I did compete in this contest in 1993, not to age myself, but in 1993 I did compete in this contest, and I can honestly say I got 0 out of 12. It was definitely a very challenging competition. So timing is an aspect of it. You only have a certain amount of time to solve these problems. As we look at the Vibe coding, and there are risks associated with it. Like everything in AI, we do have to be aware of the challenges of using it. It is very capable, but it is not 100%. So we do absolutely have to consider the cybersecurity aspects. That is definitely still an early challenge. Technical debt and code bloat. We can give it examples and ideas and have it learn from other code that we have developed, or if this is your first coding venture as a startup, are there code projects out there, open source, that you admire and that you would uphold as having good standards? Have it learn from those to do better here. An interesting phenomenon in terms of that risk, and we think about our cybersecurity risk management plans, a new phenomenon has come around with this idea of that AI hallucinates. That has happened, and it happened to me as you're developing the AI solutions, where it will generate phantom software packages. It'll say include, package XYZ, include this JavaScript library. But that actual JavaScript library doesn't exist. It just made it up to be able to solve the actual problem. You need to be aware of that, not so much because it introduces an error, but there are now bad actors out there that are creating those phantom software packages with malicious intent. And then, your system will hallucinate something that doesn't really exist, but someone's created it with evil intentions and will download that, and now your system is potentially infected. So you do have to be aware of this. It is a new cybersecurity risk in the idea of using Gen AI solutions for coding. Change management is a big risk, along with if you're having the AI do so much of this coding, do you truly understand your code? Can you fix it and understand a change? Or, do you really just have to ask the AI to do it? And then, yes, it is capable, but it's not a 100% solution. So you really should be able to maintain your understanding and your own personal ability to fix and manage change. From a testing perspective, lots of opportunity here, depending on where you are in your journey from a testing and quality perspective. You have it do things like recommending a testable methodology for your type of system, guidance on testing methodologies and tools. Or as you do have a quality management system, which you should have in place if you're developing SaMD software, generate test cases based on your requirements. Again, over time, you're having a conversation with the AI and you're building up its knowledge of your product. So have it generate test cases, generate a test traceability matrix based on those requirements and tests. And again, opportunity here to ask it, okay, did I miss test cases? Did I have test cases that cover all of my requirements? Can help you do that checking. And then also in terms of that testing, identify edge cases that may cause issues. And it's not just thinking of it as in terms of requirements. Again, using the multimodal capabilities of an AI tool, here's a sample screen that I've created for our peanut butter application, where you want the user to track some basic information, date, the brand of peanut butter, texture, mood before eating, describing their experience. I can ask the AI, based on this screenshot, can you generate some unit tests? And so it generated, actually, in this case, without giving it any more information, it used JavaScript, but it generated unit tests in various different categories. And then at the end, it did give me the option to, do you want to generate these unit tests for a particular software package or tool? And then even taking a step further based on the ISO 25000 standards, generate a series of integration tests. It's a very powerful opportunity to generate these tests. Just in terms of typing these unit tests, you can save an immense amount of time. This is a joke from probably 10 years ago, but I always find this amusing. One of the things, particularly in terms of patient safety and clinical effectiveness, you want to make sure that the application is used properly. In this case, you can see it's an older Samsung device, and they're asking probably in the idea of getting your fingerprint for secure login, they have text here, hold your finger. We all think that's probably intuitive. It's not. Users will find a way to misinterpret what you're trying to tell them, and they'll figure it out. Well, not always. So this person is holding their finger, but not doing what you want. In this case, you can again provide this image of your application to this and ask it about potential usability issues. How could this go wrong? And so you see here very quickly, and this only takes a couple seconds in the ChatGPT, to provide based on this, various different ways this can go wrong. Accessibility issues, no clear text labeling, color contrast may be an issue, no alternative actions presented here, false sense of privacy, feedback or error handling, inconsistent mental model, which clearly happened, confused the user in terms of what they really needed to do. So powerful opportunity to generate feedback and improve your application. From a testing perspective as well, we can look at, again, that traceability. So examine these tests, identifying missing tests based on the requirements. But it can also help you in test data creation. So as you're writing automated tests and you need, for our example here of this peanut butter experience, I need to generate, dates, brands, textures, mood, and descriptions of eating peanut butter to be able to test the application in an automated fashion. So I can write a prompt that goes out and uses the OpenAI to generate 5 unique entries for my form, and each entry should have these items in it. So then it's generating the data on its own and then making it available as part of your automated test script. You don't have to necessarily provide it. Powerful opportunity for time savings. I've done this in a lot of work in the world of diabetes. Generate me data for continuous glucose data around a patient with diabetes, and it can absolutely do it. Is it 100% accurate? No, you need to be aware of it, but it does emulate the data that you need to create, and then you can provide it more information and context to tweak it and to get it to be more accurate. In my example of using it for diabetes, it generated a day's worth of data every 15 minutes, and it went up and down kind of thing. But then, normally you eat, and when you eat, your blood glucose is going to go up. So I had it add 3 meals throughout the day, and then it actually demonstrated how that person's blood glucose would go up and come back down. So in terms of visualizing and charting and stuff like that, it was a very easy, quick way to be able to generate that data. And as you get into more complex examples, you can give it that information to generate that data for your testing. Once we have our application out there on market, we need to look at post-market surveillance and monitoring. You're looking just at the beginning where we were looking at feedback from potential users. Now we can generate real-time data feedback in my SaMD application of doing that visual analysis of a phase state heart rate data. We can let's look at that data objectively. Okay, is this working? What are our expectations in terms of that data, and identify where problems and can come up. AI is very good at doing anomaly detection. We can look at subjective feedback, monitoring social media, powerful opportunity, Twitter, X, Facebook, any of the various platforms, have it monitor for commentary around your particular application, your device. Can look at log analysis, complaints, adverse events, and your SBOM, your software bill of materials. Nowadays, this is very much a standard best practice kind of thing. The FDA is going to look for this. And it's really that recipe. What are the various different components and things that went in the libraries that you're using as part of your system? And you want to evaluate and make sure that there aren't issues that creep up over time. So in all of this, lots of information, but is it really faster, more effective, better? There are lots of analyses out there on this quantitatively, subjectively, This is one that I found recently, as December 2024. When you do want look at this information, if you go back to one from 2022, 2023, versus even 2024 today, this technology is improving significantly. It's only going to get better. So fast forward 9 months now. We're in September of 2025. The technology is only getting better, only being more capable. The interesting part is the more senior you are, that as the research is being conducted, the more senior, the more experienced you are. It is senior right now, the less it adds value, but that again is quickly changing. It's this technology very much capable of replacing, that intern, that first year person. What's interesting is creating a skills gap. How do those junior level resources, those people new in learning, how do they get experience to become the senior members? But imagine a future, an agent army, where you are orchestrating, or you even as a human involved in this picture. I think you still very much are for the foreseeable future, but you're going to be orchestrating these various different agents, various different AIs, creating those user stories, managing risk, the project manager, development, testing, traceability, or surveillance. A set of AIs that are doing these various different tasks, and then you as that human are reviewing and approving what it's doing. This is very early on. It is still very much, in the purview of a human, an individual using the AI to produce these tasks, but they are becoming more and more capable. There are unique risks that we need to be aware of. Hallucinations, that's probably the one that everybody's familiar with in terms of AI. It does have the tendency to want to please us, and if it doesn't know the answer, it is going to try and make something up, so you do need to be aware of that. So it is that 80-20% solution. You need to double check what it produces. There are risks from dependencies on using the AI and the coding platforms out there, right? Mentioned, there was a couple of examples of these various prototyping vibe coding platforms where they deleted the code and you could not recover it. So that puts you in a very awkward, difficult position. So I don't think the vibe coding platforms, where it's really hands off from a coding perspective, are quite ready for prime time. But in terms of prototyping, absolutely. We need to continue to be vigilant and provide those robust cybersecurity mechanisms. One of the interesting things then is unskilled developers now can use these AI systems to create applications and systems. But because they are unskilled, untrained, they don't know what they don't know. So there are potential dangers here, and things that we need to be aware of. Legal uncertainties around code ownership. I've seen this a lot in terms of movie creation and authoring of books. Who actually owns what is created? I don't think it's quite surfaced as much in the world of code ownership, and this is definitely something we need to be aware of as we use AI more and more to generate code. Who actually owns it? These last couple here, I did mention this idea of de-skilling, understanding or degradation of our critical thinking. As the AI systems do become more capable of doing this work, we have to maintain our ability to do it likewise and understand it. We want to look at using AI best practices. And as we evolve here and AI becomes more a part of our life in the software development lifecycle, those who can explain what they're doing, that can communicate better, are the ones that are going to excel. More context is better. Examples, even better. Double check everything. Act like an expert, and even better, again, incorporate standards using templates, examples that you have of the work output that you want to create, and take a look at that agents MD file. Ultimately, AI is game changing, but it's really about those people and process. Question everything produced by AI, double check, remain vigilant, practice your critical thinking skills. It's not about achieving perfection or AGI. This is one of those fallacies I think about AI. the fact that it can hallucinate and can make mistakes, people use that as a reason for not using it. But we as humans are not perfect. What software developer do you know ever produced a perfect system? It's just not something that happens. So how can we use the AI technology to improve, to get better? AI is not going to replace you just yet. People using AI will. I see it is at 1 o'clock Eastern here, so thank you for your time and attention. I hope you got something of value out of that. If you're interested in a no obligations follow-up discussion, love to have conversations. I'm doing numerous podcasts, recording one later today, so look for those where I'm having conversations with various experts in the industry about all things AI usually these days, particularly in the focus of digital health and software as a medical device. So look for those, follow us on LinkedIn. Love to continue the conversation. Here's my contact information if you'd like to get in touch. Along with that QR code there, I'll leave that there on the screen, but we are at time. So thank you very much for your attention.